Hey Internet, I hope you're doing well. If you're tired of arguing about JPEGs and ETFs, then stop, watch this video, because I'm going to talk about Bitcoin and real estate, in particular, why I believe Bitcoin is a far better investment than real estate for the foreseeable future. It's been this way for the past decade or so, and I just don't see this trend reversing anytime soon for a lot of reasons I'm going to discuss today. And I should mention that real estate is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I always wanted to own property. I've always been interested since I was a little kid about real estate, and I also got a degree in finance and technically minored in commercial real estate. I had an internship in commercial real estate, but now I'm just not interested in owning it at all. I think Bitcoin is the far better option. So let's talk about that. If you're considering buying real estate, buying more real estate, buying Bitcoin, buying more Bitcoin, then watch this video. I think I have a few good points to go over. So we've got to start with Bitcoin's ultimate scarcity. Bitcoin has a supply cap of 21 million. We all know this. We know that there will always be less and never be more Bitcoin, something I like to say, just because regardless of the demand, there's no way to change it. And when it comes to real estate is relatively scarce, but in the end, it's not ultimately scarce. And I think those that believe that will benefit greatly. An example I like to use is if the price of homes in a particular town doubled overnight, then you better believe that the construction and the production of these particular homes in this particular city will increase nearly overnight. That's how capitalism works. Business people see opportunities, they see arbitrage, and they go for it. People like to use the example of New York City and go, well, yeah, look at New York City. Even if New York City, the price of that real estate doubled overnight, they will make taller buildings. We see it happen. That's how it works. People will convert office into housing. People will convert old retail, old industrial into condos. It's just something that we can't avoid, and Bitcoin is ultimately scarce. No matter what the demand is, the supply will always stay the same. The next thing that comes to my mind is Bitcoin's global accessibility. It doesn't matter where you live. You can live in the United States. You can live in the global South. You can live anywhere on this planet and have access to Bitcoin, which, real estate is not globally accessible. I don't think I have to explain that, but it's also globally and it's globally accessible, but it's also globally inclusive. And what I mean by that is regardless of what tier of wealth class you're in, you have access to the same Bitcoin that Michael Saylor has access to. Whether you're trying to buy billions worth or millions worth or just dollars worth, you can benefit from the same Bitcoin that everyone else gets to benefit from. Now, yes, we can go into discussions on UTXO sizes and transaction fees in the future, but the principle is still the same. Bitcoin is available to everyone around the world, to wealth brackets around the world. And I think this is obviously really awesome. It's really great that regardless of where you are, you can take advantage of this amazing network that humanity created. The other thing that comes to mind is Bitcoin's portability and divisibility. Bitcoin is extremely portable. Obviously, a building is not. You can't just pick it up and leave. If you were one of the people that left California and went somewhere else where you have more freedom, like Texas, I'm just saying that because I just made a similar move. But you can't pick up your real estate and take it to Texas, unfortunately. And that's a great advantage that Bitcoin has over real estate. Bitcoin is also divisible. We know that Bitcoin is divided into 100 million Satoshis each. And you can divide real estate to an extent. If you have commercial property, you can try to take an out parcel out and sell that. But in the end, it's not very easy to split up. It's not very easy just to go and sell a quarter of a building or a quarter of a real estate portfolio. And that's something that you obviously can do with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has liquidity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is way faster. There are no business days. You can, if you have a problem in the middle of a night, Sunday night, you can sell your Bitcoin to, there will be someone who is willing to buy it. You can take it to an exchange. You can, sell it to an individual. It's not that easy to offload your real estate if you decide that, you need the money, or just for whatever reason, that's not really an option for you. And with Bitcoin, it is. Another thing that comes top of mind when I'm thinking about Bitcoin versus real estate are the fact that Bitcoin has no intermediaries and no counterparties. And when you think about real estate, the list of intermediaries and counterparties is like this long. You've got the federal government, you've got the state government, you've got the municipalities wanting their taxes, you've got the insurance and the courtrooms, and then there's just like I could name a list all the way down to the floor of the intermediaries and counterparties that are involved with real estate. And with Bitcoin, I wouldn't advise for doing this, but you technically could store it in your head. You could memorize your 24 words, and the only counterparty is yourself. And this is just it's a really weird way of thinking about it. Like the fact that you can just own Bitcoin in your head, and no one can tell you what to do with that. So Bitcoin has no intermediaries and no counterparty risks. It also has very low carrying cost. Think about property taxes. Think about insurance costs. Think about actually managing it, having someone be at that property, whether it's a building or a house. Someone's got to mow the grass, someone's got to wash the windows, someone's got to do all these things. And when it comes to Bitcoin, there are very minimal costs. If you're doing a single sig self-custody, maybe you just, you paid for whatever you store the seed on, you paid for your hardware device, maybe you get a multi-sig set up, maybe you have a multi-sig provider like Unchained Capital who holds an extra key for you. But in the end, these carrying costs are so low, and you can do it for free or do it extremely cheaply. And when it comes to real estate, I always like to ask people, do you really own the real estate if you have to pay property taxes on it every year? And if you don't pay said taxes, you'll get your property seized. There are no such taxes for Bitcoin. Yes, you have to pay capital gains if you sell it, but I mean, it's a great thing. That means you're making money. So, there's just very little cost when it comes to holding Bitcoin, which I think it makes it much preferable over real estate. Another thing that I think of are estate planning and inheritance measures. If you are thinking about leaving a legacy and leaving assets to your heirs, it is much easier to figure this out if you're just passing them Bitcoin. Because when it comes to property, maybe your heirs, they might want to sell it. One of the siblings wants to sell it, one of them wants to keep it. They have to manage it. It's really difficult. If you're passing Bitcoin onto your heirs, not only will they be very thankful that you bought Bitcoin when it was low, and I think your family will remember your name forever, for generations, because you were the one that got your family started on a Bitcoin standard, or you started buying it early, which gave them access to capital in the future as the US dollar, it will be inevitably debased to hundreds of trillions, probably quadrillions in debt, by the time my grandkids are around. I just think it's way easier. It's way easier for estate planning and inheritance reasons. Another thing I think about are the immutable ownership records that Bitcoin has. When you're trying to figure out who owns a property, you have to go and make sure there's no liens. You have to go to the courthouse, make sure it doesn't have, it has what we call marketable title. This is something that you just don't have to deal with when it comes to Bitcoin. You can go to any address and see and verify, don't trust, verify, and see if the person who claims to own those coins or the address that claims to own those coins actually does. And an anecdote that I like to discuss when I talk about this is title insurance. Title insurance essentially does that. They just go and check the ownership records, making sure that no one owns your property. Like I said, there's no liens on it and whatnot. And at least in Texas, I'm not sure around the country, there is no competition. Um, Title insurance is a fixed rate no matter what firm you go to, how long they've been around, what sort of exceptional service they provide. Everyone has to charge the same amount when it comes to title insurance in Texas. And really, all you're paying for is making sure that the ownership record of that property is clean, which is just an extreme waste of time and energy. It definitely just makes sense to have a public digital ledger that anyone can go and verify. So I think those are all the reasons that come to mind, or at least those are all the reasons that I had written down. And I know it's difficult to argue the volatility that Bitcoin has at this stage. It's hard to argue the tax benefits that real estate has at this stage. And I understand that you can't live inside of a Bitcoin, but that doesn't mean that you can't rent and spend the rest of the money that you would be spending on all the things I discussed today, like management and taxes and um, unpredictable interest rates. You spend that on Bitcoin instead of a property. I think you'd be much better off renting. I think this is much more common, especially for Gen Zs, and as long as you're not living above your means and you're buying Bitcoin diligently, you will be very well off in the future. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Bitcoin and real estate. I really am surprised to be feeling this way because, like I said, I always had a soft spot for real estate. I always wanted to own property, but now the only property I want to own is Bitcoin. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like, leave a comment, let me know what you're thinking. If you're watching this on X, do the same thing. Help a brother out. I've got engagement helps. Help me out with the algorithm. All right. See y'all.